If you're bearish right now, quickly pivot to being bonish, as we've seen millions of Bitcoin and ETH longs get liquidated, as we also have seen gold go completely vertical, which very likely we're going to see Bitcoin do the same thing. Where we see BlackRock selling, the US government selling, Binance especially selling Bitcoin in just hours, right? Selling a total of over $1 billion. Is this major manipulation before the Powell speech, which now we've actually seen, at least at the time of me recording this, Powell is speaking right now. And one of the things he said is that growth is better than expected. Is this dump potentially over? Was this whole dump just a manipulated dump? Where obviously a couple of days ago we saw specifically altcoins get completely spooked. We saw many altcoins down 40, 50, 60+% in hourly candles, like massive amounts of alts getting dumped on. But is this dump over? As we see also Bitcoin, and this is actually, I actually went back also in the charts to just look at the 21-week moving average. We have had 1, 2, 3, basically right on it, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like 8 consecutive weekly candles with Bitcoin closing or bouncing exactly on the 21-week. A couple wicks below that are very, very short-lived so far. But I went back, even looking at the green 21-week and 50 blue, the 50-week blue moving average. As you can see, we've ping-ponged between these two, but we've just been sitting exactly on the 21-week for basically 2 months. And I couldn't find another period, at least in recent memory of the last few years. This is probably the most 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that was kind of close. And that was already 5 years ago. So you have to go back at least 5 years since the last time we saw the price of Bitcoin just sit on the 21-week moving average so consistently. I think that's one of the major reasons as well. We've also seen the Bollinger Bands extremely tight because the price has just been very clearly, obviously manipulated, which it always has been. Every asset, every financial instrument or every stock is basically manipulated to some extent. But specifically with Bitcoin, what the heck's going on? Also, we see gold just hit its most overbought levels ever on its monthly RSI. And very clearly, we know that gold is just going completely vertical. I mean, the more I zoom out on this, pretty much since the beginning of 2024, which the beginning of 2024 is right about, let me zoom out, right about here, it's just been going straight up. And now we know there's a strong correlation with Bitcoin. We know Bitcoin is likely to follow soon. But I mean, clearly we've seen a decent amount of manipulation, a decent amount of liquidations, especially, I mean, pretty much only long liquidations over the past couple of days. But there is going to be a time when it ends. And typically that is exactly where maximum opportunity is when we see these very, very volatile, very dumpy, very big. I downloaded a sound, so I'm going to maybe press some buttons every once in a while. Pretty good. Do you guys like this? Sounds. Anyway, this is typically when you expect the biggest moves out of dumps like this. The biggest pumps out of dumps is when we see the massive volatility like we've absolutely seen in just the last few days. If Bitcoin is shadowing gold's rally with a roughly 60 to 100 day lag or delay, Bitcoin should be over 150,000 within the next 2 months. And we also see, obviously, this chart, as we've seen many times before, it's kind of like right on that cusp. And again, I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or next week or just sometime before the end of this year, but I do think that Bitcoin is going to catch up massively. We have seen so many long liquidations in this market, and we've been seeing Bitcoin consistently just get bought up. Specifically, this is why I brought this up earlier and why I think this is a big deal, is because we're still just sitting right on the 21-week moving average. The last time we visited the 50-week moving average was back in April. So about 6 months ago, 2 entire quarters ago was the last time we even came down to the 50-week moving average. Right now, it sits about exactly at 102, so right around 100,000 US dollars. Is it, basically, my point of saying that is like, it is such a gigantic level around even psychological. I mean, $100,000 per coin. The only thing bigger than that psychologically is $1 million per coin, right? 100,000 is huge. And one day we're going to be looking back, talking about this as Bitcoin crashes from 1.5 million to 1 million. But right now, we went up to about 125,000, crashing down. We have not come back down to 100,000 yet at all in this dump. But absolutely, it's a realistic scenario. It's possible. But my point of saying that is we've seen so many liquidations. We've seen so much sell pressure, especially, and this is the key part, especially in those very, very quick, rapid flash crash moments like we saw a couple of days ago, where, like we saw, I mean, for example, look at ETH had a pretty big dump. I mean, actually, if we want to look specifically something like Cardano, look at this. Look at this wick on Cardano. This was in a single daily candle. It was down 67%, and then bounced up to only be down about 15 or 16% in that same daily candle. So, and a lot of altcoins did that same thing. It wasn't just Cardano, but my point being is massive collapse in the price there. Even if Bitcoin goes down to 100,000, alts typically don't bleed like they bled a couple of days ago, unless it's such a sudden liquidation cascade, massive crash, right? Like I said, I bought some ADA below 30 cents during that crash a couple of days ago, and I got multiple people telling me like, no way, there's no way it didn't even go down that low or something. Well, if you're looking at like CoinMarketCap or something, you're right, because CoinMarketCap doesn't actually give you like detailed data. You need to actually look at different exchanges, or at least look specifically, on Tradingview, different exchanges. Many exchanges, it did go below that, right? Maybe the ones you're trading on, they might not have. By the way, sign up with Femex below if you want to, because that was one of the exchanges that it did go below, and you could get entries there. There's a link in the description. But like, for example, I mean, Coinbase is known for crashing every time there's a lot of volatility. So that is why I always recommend basically signing up to as many exchanges. Well, I don't know if I want to say that, because I'm sure many exchanges maybe aren't trustworthy, but sign up to as many trustworthy exchanges as you can with proven track records that give you and keep access to your capital during those massive events. Because really, what is the point if one of those flash crashes happen and you don't have access to maybe buy the dip in those critical minutes or moments? Then, I mean, if you have a long-term mindset, then it truly doesn't matter. But if you really do want to scoop some cheap entries on some of these projects or some of these coins during flash crashes, you need to make sure you have some options exchange-wise. You want to make sure you actually have diversified enough in your exchanges that you can actually use them when a crash happens. And also, there's not many downsides to just having more options, right? But this is gold versus Bitcoin since 2015, and you can see here, right here is this is gold, and in yellow is Bitcoin. You see gold moving first, right? And then what do you see? Look how, first of all, that's the biggest part. Look how massive this move was, or is, that we're still currently in the middle of. Especially now, the last few months, it's literally just straight vertical. And Bitcoin has been moving up. But if it's going to be comparably, actually what you notice about these two in the past, the Bitcoin pumps that came after the gold pumps were at least equal to, if not greater than, the gold pumps. And this gold pump is massive. Meaning, if it's like the past, then Bitcoin should have a much more exaggerated move to the upside than we've seen so far. In fact, what we've seen so far is not really much. We should expect Bitcoin to actually go much higher. According to Merlin on X, Bitcoiners are testing the most important trend line of the past 3 years. It was formed during the bear market, held through every correction. We just tapped it again. History says this is where Bitcoin bounces the hardest. This is where you go all in, according to this chart, right? A bullish retest of this. I saw another chart actually yesterday, and it was just showing the previous bull runs of Bitcoin where we had these parabolic retail FOMO induced pumps. But this current cycle looks a lot more similar to this chart, where it's just basically vertical accumulation of institutions. So like the dumps are not as long lasting or as sharp for Bitcoin, but the pumps aren't either. And it's just more like sustained up over time and over time. And that would really throw a lot of people off if that happened. And it really would be max pain for a lot of OGs in the market that have spent years and years investing in crypto. It would be like maximum pain if we didn't have some kind of crazy blow off top and we just kind of drifted upwards for years and years at a time. That's a possibility. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but Is that not possible too, that now because we have such steady flows from the Bitcoin ETFs, and because of the instruments that are now involved in Bitcoin, and because of so much more capital allowed access to get this asset, maybe the pumps and dumps are just going to get less and less. They won't swing as much, or if there are pumps and dumps, they can be exaggerated, but they just get right back on track within days. Maybe it's possible. Maybe we won't enter like these crazy. I mean, already the structure of this bull market is throwing so many people off. We already know that. A lot of people are confused. Like, why are we following the trend we are now as opposed to anything similar to the past? Well, as I've been saying for 2 years now, fundamentally, we're in a different cycle in the sense that the Bitcoin spot ETFs truly changed the fundamentals of how this market, even simple supply and demand about this market works, I think. Obviously, I think a big short squeeze is loading, especially after we've had so many long liquidations, but that doesn't mean the long liquidations are over yet. I think a lot of people right now are looking at this thinking, okay, we just had a massive drop. A lot of shorts are in profit. Now it's time to wreck the shorts. I would say hold on to your shorts a little bit. Like hold on. Like, don't get ahead of yourself, right? Like, I was trying to use a term of like shorts, meaning like your physical shorts, but it's confusing because shorts are also short positions, so it doesn't make sense. But also, there's a giant liquidity cluster around about 107, 109,000, which filled actually, I believe, since this post was posted. But a big liquidity cluster is now also 116 to 120,000. What he says here on X, Ted says, I think Bitcoin most likely sweep the downside liquidity before any positive price movement. And also, we did see Elon Musk further reiterating how basically Bitcoin is good. And it's like is it a big piece of news? I don't know. But it also reaffirms his current position on Bitcoin. It's based on energy. You can't fake it, just like you can fake the US dollar. And that's exactly why it's the simplest argument to why Bitcoin is real money and the US dollar is fake. Because the US dollar is backed by nothing. It's backed by thin air. It's backed by imagination. It's backed by some guy typing in numbers on a computer and creating more of it. There's no actual backing of the US dollar. But with energy, you actually can't fake it, right? And that's what Bitcoin is backed by. It's backed by energy. And he understands this. And a lot of people understand this. I don't know if over the past few years, Elon has gone back and forth, it seems like, on if he... I don't think he went back and forth necessarily, but I think people do not know what his true stance on Bitcoin is, meaning is like, does he like it or does he not like it? But that post, if anything, just kind of reiterated that, yes, he understands it. And it's obviously more valuable than the US dollar or any fiat currency. One thing, too, I thought was interesting on the Bitcoin dominance, we came right up during that crash a couple days ago. Bitcoin dominance shot up to about 63%, exactly where this trend line was, and then got rejected. So what does that mean? This is actually, in my opinion, the weakest Bitcoin dominance has been in the past couple of years, considering the current structure that's been forming. I think Bitcoin has a lot of pumping to do, but I do think it's very interesting that Bitcoin dominance looks like it got rejected here pretty strongly, especially after since it started dumping back in early June. So we have 4 months of Bitcoin dominance really entering a downtrend, and then most recently getting a rejection here, I think is like a big deal. And I'm not exactly sure what conclusion to draw from it, other than I think Bitcoin dominance is just on a downtrend. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin's not going to go up. In fact, I think Bitcoin is going to go up. And I think it's possible Bitcoin dominance could have a resurgence again. I just personally think any resurgence will be short-lived, because it looks like alts are just, especially after this most recent alt shakeout. I mean, look at this massive candle, this massive wick on the entire altcoin market. Everything, the entire crypto space minus Bitcoin. Pretty big swing there. But for the most part, got bought up basically immediately after. But the daily chart for Bitcoin really does look kind of messy. Obviously a big swing on Bitcoin during that dump as well. But the weekly chart doesn't look messy. We're just sitting right now on the 21 week. But as I said, I would not be surprised if we actually in the very, very, very short term did revisit the 50 week at 100. What are stocks doing? S&P 500 obviously had a little bit of a dump as well on last week. Is it substantial? I mean, I don't know. It's been just setting new all-time high after all-time high, so a little dump here isn't anything crazy, but like very interesting. Either way, my strategy is simple, and my advice, or my non-financial opinion advice, is that I'm buying as much Bitcoin as I can. And that's it. But get signed up with any of the links below if you want to buy Bitcoin, altcoins, or trade with Femex, BYBIT, or BITUNIX. And with that, you